The Archdiocese of San Francisco updated its high school faculty handbook last month. New clauses require staff members to uphold church teaching, denouncing issues the church teaches are gravely evil. California lawmakers urged San Francisco Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone to remove the morality clause. Cordileone responded by asking, would you hire a campaign manager who advocates policies contrary to those you stand for? Patrick Deneen is an associate professor of constitutional studies at the University of Notre Dame, and Leslie Ford is with the DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society at the Heritage Foundation. You wrote an editorial for the Wall Street Journal on this. What is your main concern?
My main concern here is really the lawmakers who are questioning the Archdiocese's actions here. Two of the lawmakers have even asked if investigations can be opened into the Archdiocese's actions. Now, this is concerning because as lawmakers, they should understand that the Archdiocese has the right, the freedom to ensure that the Catholic schools are Catholic.
Patrick, is it legal for the government to try to tell Catholic schools what they can and cannot teach?
Well, I mean, I think at this point, the question or issue is not the legality of what the diocese is doing, though it may come to that. It seems to me the question of legality always has to be asked in light of the protections of religion and religious organizations that are inscribed in the very First Amendment of our Constitution that protect the free exercise of religion. The bar should be very high before the state interferes in the inner operations of religious organizations.
I loved Archbishop Cordileone's response to the lawmakers saying, you wouldn't hire somebody that doesn't agree with your policies. All I ask is for the same. And it's really hard to argue with that, even from a politician. Leslie, companies can fire someone for not adhering to company policy. Isn't this the same thing?
It's exactly the same thing, but it's even more important for institutions that are affiliated with the Catholic Church, with any religion. We understand that schools have the right to expect teachers to uphold their mission. We would expect this of a Jewish school, of an Islamic school, of even a secular school. Why shouldn't this Catholic school have the same freedom here?
And Patrick, do you see this affecting the church, its schools, its institutions as a whole, this debate and what happens with this?
There's no question that what hangs in the balance here is in many respects the very capacity of the church and its institutions to practice and exercise the freedom of its faith in the public square and in its own institutions. This is a very clarifying moment for us, it seems to me. And it seems to me that we are leaving very quickly the stage in which one can attempt to be half one thing and half the other. The church and its institutions have to be able to control and operate in a realm of freedom in terms of how they hire, the kinds of people that they place in positions of ministry, including teachers. And if the church can't do that, then we are no longer living in a free country.
What do you think is the next step in California?
Well, no one knows what the California legislators are going to do, and no one knows if these investigations are actually going to go forward. But it's important for all of these people involved, the teachers, the families, the lawmakers, to uphold religious freedom in this instance, to look at the Catholic Archdiocese and say, we understand that you've been teaching these moral teachings for 2,000 years. This isn't anything new. It's reasonable for you to expect your teachers to come alongside your mission and uphold it. They shouldn't say one thing in the classroom and another thing elsewhere in their lives.
The Archbishop also made it clear this was not to set up people to be fired. It was to clarify what has always been believed and taught by the church. Leslie Ford with the Heritage Foundation, Patrick Deneen from Notre Dame, thank you both for helping us get a clearer picture of this.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's been 50 years now since hundreds of marchers, led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., left Selma, Alabama for Montgomery. The anniversary will be commemorated in Selma tomorrow. In March 1965, the protesters encountered violent opposition. They were beaten with billy clubs and attacked by police dogs. With the support of federal troops, the demonstrators successfully made the four-day walk. 50 miles it took them. Later that year, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, giving all African Americans the right to vote. Coming up, Pope Francis meets with a group of pilgrims who try to imitate the early Christians. Thank God for Friday, and we thank God for each of you. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with the EWTN News Nightly team. Pope Francis meets with members of a Catholic missionary movement today, thanking them for their work and the benefit to the church. The Neo-Catechumenal Way, or the Way as it's often referred to, draws inspiration from the early Christians. It was founded in Spain in 1964. The aim, to evangelize non-Christians and fallen away Christians.
Cristo è risorto. Cristo vive.
The Pope praised the group's missionary spirit. Tomorrow, Francis meets with members of another lay movement, Communion and Liberation, founded by Father Luigi Giussani. Joining us tonight from Rome is Rose Besigye of Uganda, a nurse working with orphans whose parents have died of AIDS. Rose, HIV/AIDS has taken so many lives. What are you able to do for these AIDS orphans?
What we are doing is what any other projects do, but our main aim is to tell each person that is infected that is not defined by the HIV/AIDS. That even if he's infected, he has a value all the same. That is not defined by the situation, by the problem, because many times when we find ourselves in problems and situations like sickness and poverty, many times we think that is everything. We disintegrate into the situation and become a situation. But we are greater than the situation. We are greater than HIV/AIDS.
What do you think is the most effective way to combat AIDS in a morally acceptable way?
To combat AIDS is really to say the human life has a value. We protect it. Because even if we bring the vaccine without knowing that a human being is a value, we waste time. Because today there is HIV/AIDS, tomorrow there will be another thing.
Can you just give us a brief picture of Luigi Giussani and the vision that you are carrying out and others there?
My dear, that you are talking about my father. Because this is the man that turned my life upside down. That is a revolution in my life. Because that is where I understood who God is. It's really the end of slavery for me. So if I talk about Father Giussani, is somebody who ended the slavery in my life. Father Giussani asked me one question. He told me, you know, Rose, if you are the only human being on the earth, God could have come all the same for only this person that is Rose. So this is where I understood that communion and liberation is that God that came to look for me.
Well, obviously it's made a huge difference in your life and the lives of many others. Rose Besigye, we appreciate you joining us, and our prayers are with you as you meet with the Holy Father.
Thank you.
And Pope Francis is more popular than ever among Americans. That according to a new survey which shows the Pope's popularity in the U.S. rising. Wyatt Goolsbee has details tonight.
Brian, we are just a few days away from marking the 2-year anniversary since Pope Francis was elected, and according to Pew Research, there has been no dip in his popularity, which has been steadily rising, especially among Catholics here in the U.S.
It's no secret Pope Francis receives rock star treatment around the world, but the latest numbers prove just how popular he is in the U.S. 90% of American Catholics now say they have at least a favorable view of Francis. Compare that to the 95% of American Catholics who attend weekly Mass. Seems pretty high, right? Well, it's high enough to be on par with St. John Paul II at the height of his popularity. JP2's popularity peaked after a 1996 visit to the U.S. at 93%, and Pope Benedict hit a high at 83% after his U.S. visit in 2008. Jessica Martinez with Pew Research studies the Pope's popularity.
Part of what's happening is that among Americans overall, as they get to know more about the Pope, they're increasingly expressing favorable views of him. So as they learn more, they're liking more about it.
But for people of faith, it's not the fame that draws them to Pope Francis. Prayer and the Pope are what drew Colleen Payne back to Mass. She was raised Catholic but fell away. Colleen credits her return to Francis.
A true Christian is to love, period. That doesn't mean you accept sin, or that doesn't mean, but it is to love. It is not for me to judge you or for anyone. And he understands this. Pope Francis truly, in the soul, in the core of his being, understands what it's like to truly love a person, and we are not here to judge.
Pope Francis is scheduled to visit 3 American cities in September. Past popes have received a boost in popularity right after their visits, so we'll have to see if his numbers go up even more. But in the meantime, Brian, the Holy Father clearly continues to inspire a lot of Americans.
All right, thank you, Wyatt Goolsby. And tonight we revisit an inspirational story from earlier this week about